So today we are going to build the school interface. So we have school interface 1, 2, and 3, and we're going to try to get through it all as fast as possible. Okay, so before we get started on the actual code, I figured we can start by detailing what exactly we need to do. What are the steps? So we don't have to follow this verbatim. We can just kind of write our own steps of what we want to do and work through that way. So we're building a command line interface, and this is generally what the prompt is going to be looking like. So we have the school name up here, and then we give the user a bunch of options. So we want the user to be able to list all the students, view individual student information, add a student, and remove a student from the system. So here, I just made these into what our feature list is going to be. So these are the things that we need to implement. But before we get started on implementing things, what should be our first step? How are we building this? What are some of the things that we need to create? And you guys can raise your hand or shout them out. We can start from the steps over here as well. But in general, if we're creating a command line interface, what are some things we need to do? It doesn't have to be in order.
Print out the options you can pick from.
Okay, so print out CLI prompt and give user option to choose one. Okay, that's one thing that we need to do. What else? In our code, it's one of the steps over here. What do we need to do?
Is this are we starting from the very beginning, or are we starting on, is this part of step 3 of the whole?
No, this is from the beginning.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you can you can start making the classes for the school.
Okay. So what are classes you said?
It is be school, then people, and inside of people we can do students and staff.
Okay. So we know that we need we need students and we need staff. And if we want to do it in an inheritance kind of way, we can make a class called person instead of people. Typically you want to make the class singular. So school, and then student and staff will inherit from person, just because if we look at our data, we see that both students and staff, here, let me put this on the side. Both of these have a bunch of repeated ones. So we have name, age, role, and then password. So those are all similar. So we can kind of take those and put them into a higher class.
Yeah, I have a quick question though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What would be the best starting point for this? Would it be all the way like the lowest child, or the highest parent?
I would say typically when you're creating classes, let's say we only knew that we needed a student and a staff class, and while you're creating it, you realize that there's a lot of similar code. So then what typically happens is you decide to abstract that out into a parent class, and then have it take it from there. So I would say if you know already that you want to create a parent class and 2 subclasses, create the parent class first, because the subclasses are going to call on the parent class to initialize it. So you can't really create the subclass fully until you create the parent class. But if you didn't know that you wanted to use inheritance, you could just start creating the student and staff, and then you can refactor and take the common information and put it into a higher class after that. Okay, so I think this is a good starting point. We can create our classes, and we can print out our CLI. Oops. What did I do? Doesn't matter. Sorry for the popping. Okay. Let's start with creating our classes. So we need our first we need our first file that will be running for our entire program. So sometimes this is called a runner.py. Sometimes it is also called main.py. So that's like your main entry point into your program. We can call it runner, we can call it main, it doesn't matter. So right now I'm just going to call it runner, so it matches what we have in the exercise itself. And in here, I'm just going to say here, I will copy this over. So this is our starting code. We haven't created this class yet, so we can't run it. So that could probably be our next step. So we have a runner file, and we need to create our classes. We can just create our classes in here, not inside the data folder, but so let's say this is school.py. And if we create a new file called, so we need, what was it? School, person, staff. Yeah.
Or person, student, staff.
Yeah. I think it's easier if I view it this way. Okay. Okay, school, student.py. Staff.py. And let's say we're going to create a person. So you don't have to create all your files initially. If you know like what steps you want to take, you can create your files and then start filling them in. It just depends on how you like to progress through your code. And sorry, one second. Okay, so our files seem to be like crowding here. So I would say let's create a folder to hold our classes, just to make it easier. That's fine. So I'm gonna grab this one and this one and person. Okay, so now our code is a little more organized. And we can start filling it in. So school is the first class that we're gonna use. We do have the basic school class here, so I can actually just use this. But so we're creating class school with an uppercase again. We're gonna define an init function, and this initializer is going to take the school name. And then in here, we can do, we can set up our attributes. So name equals name. What is it called? And then the school will have access to staff as well as students. So right now we're just going to initialize it to empty lists because we don't have the mechanism to grab the information yet. So students, there we go. Okay, so we have our basic school. If we go back to our runner, we see here, we're just instantiating the school. So see here, we were trying to import school. Since it is inside of the classes folder, we have to say classes.school. And then you can import school from there. We instantiate it, and then we're going to print out this. So I'm going to print out the runner, and this is our school. Let's change it to oops. Okay, cool. Now that we've created the school, let's create our other classes. So staff and student. I'll use this as a starting point. So we're creating our student. We are taking in all the information that is given about the student. And what is this information based off of? Can someone tell me?
The CSV file?
Exactly. So when you're building a program, you typically have what do we want to do with this program, and what data do we have that we want to display. So a lot of times your classes are going to be based on the data. So the first place you have to look for is your data files to understand what you need to build. So yeah, so since those are created off of that, so if I go to my student, I can create the student and I can create the staff. But let's say I don't want to create these and then go and create a person. So let's start with the person class. Let's start with the parent. So what do I write here? So I know I want to call it person. I need an initializer. And this initializer will have to take quite a few things. So I feel like this is confusing now. Okay. So initializer takes self, and then we also look at these CSVs and we want to see which are the attributes that we want to extrapolate, which are the attributes that we want to put into the person class versus having it specifically in student and staff. So we know we want name, age, role, and password. Let me double check. Yeah, name, age, role, and password. So school ID and employee ID are the only ones that are different. So let's create that. So we're going to go into person. We added name, age, role, and password. So that will be taken in. And then I'm going to copy this over. But yeah, so we're going to set all of these attributes. Okay, so I think the person class is pretty done. We don't really have any methods that we want to add yet. So let's move on to staff. I'm going to create a class staff that has an initializer as well. And what is this initializer going to take?
Does it just take the employee ID, or does it take everything else that's part of it?
It will take everything else.
Okay.
So in our program, we ourselves are not going to be creating a person. So our school class requires staff and it requires students. So we are going to be creating the staff and creating the students. The person class is only going to be used by the student and staff class to not have like repetitive code pretty much. So, sorry.
I just said, got it, thank you.
Oh, awesome, yeah. Okay, we were starting with staff. Getting lost with all of the files, okay. So we're starting with staff. We want to take in all of the information. So we take all of this in. And so do I need to set all of these if I'm using, well, actually, hold on, okay. So when I initialize staff, I'm gonna send in all of this information. If I want staff to inherit from person, what do I have to do here? Anyone?
You have to use the super init and then bring in the variables that are in there, name, age, password, and role.
Yes. And before I call super here, how do I signal that this class is going to inherit from person?
You have to put person in parentheses next to staff.
Yeah. So person, I didn't import it yet. So I'm going to import from person, the file, import person, the class. Okay. Cool. So now we have access to the person class. We are creating staff that inherits from person, and then we are going to call the super method to initialize the beginning stuff that is related to the staff. So all the stuff that is in here, name, age, password, and role. So I can say init, I believe it's like this, right? So here init is going to take name, age, role, and password. Cool. What else is left? Seems like employee ID was left out. So we can do that. So self dot employee ID equals employee ID. Okay. Am I missing anything? Does this look correct?
I have one question on the importing part. So I was looking at the examples, and in some of them they have from classes dot staff, import staff, or
so
how do I correctly?
It depends where you are. So here staff is within the same folder as person.
Okay.
So when I'm importing person, all I have to specify is the file name, which is here person, and then I'm importing that class from there. Versus if I go back to my runner down here, I'm importing the school class from the classes folder. So this is why I have to say classes.school, because runner, if you look here, is on the same level as this folder here.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Folder. So that's why you have to access the folder first, and then the file name, and then what you want to import.
Okay, and then last question on it. So in some instances or some examples, I was looking, they were putting, I think they were in the same folder, and they were just putting like from dot school import school. Is the period necessary when it's in the same folder?
It is not. The period just says that it's from in here. So if you put it or don't, it will basically do the same thing. Okay, so cool. If I did dot classes here and I run this again. Oh, never mind. Attempted relative import. never mind. I think the dot is if it is a file and not the
Separate files.
I think so. Okay, I'm gonna have to look that up again. Yeah, because in staff we didn't have to do. Okay, we'll test it out. When we're gonna import this, we'll see if this actually works or not.
Okay.
So if we run it, we'll figure it out.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. We could also try instantiating staff here. So we can say S equals staff, and then we send in age something, role, employee ID. Okay. I need to go into my classes folder and then Python 3, this is staff.py. Oh, required one more argument. Something, okay. Okay, so the import worked here. If I do a dot, see. Yeah, the dot has some other like relative import function. So typically you won't need that. You won't need to use it. Okay, so we created our staff. Our student is going to be basically the same thing with just employee ID being different. So instead of employee ID, we're going to use student ID. So I'm just going to copy everything over from here. Be careful when you're copying things over because that's where bugs are introduced. So staff into student. Okay. So here I need to make sure that I change everything that is related to the staff. So student, instead of employee ID, this is going to be student ID. I could also do Command F, which will find everything that says employee ID. And then I can replace it here for student ID. And then this one replaces this, like this one and the one afterwards. This one replaces them all. So this is a useful thing if you're changing variable names. Okay, so we are calling the person initializer with this information. Okay, I think everything looks good here. We can refactor it to take in the keyword args. We'll talk about that in a bit. So first, let's loop through load data. Okay. So let's go back to our to-do list. We've created all of our classes. So I think this one is done. I don't know how to mark it done, but basically these steps are done. We need to print out the CLI prompt. And we also need to, what else do we need to do? How are we gonna instantiate these classes? So we are wanting to create the staff and what? Students, right? Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes. And how are we going to create the staff and students? So in our school, we want to create staff and students. What are these going to be based off of?
Wouldn't it be the CSV files?
Exactly. From
using the dictionary reader.
Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna be using dict reader. Reader. Okay. So we can create the staff and the students from the CSV files, and then print out the CLI prompt. I think this is the extent of what the first one does. So awesome. So let's go on to this next one, create staff and students from the CSV files. So let's start with our runner. Our runner has context of our school. Typically, you want your files to kind of be doing one thing. So our runner file, let's say, is going to have context of our school, and it will also print out the command line interface. So print the prompt, and in our school, we have staff and we have students, but we need a function that actually loops through the CSV file and creates it. What are some options for us? Where should we put the CSV reading code that creates instances of the class? There are multiple ways of doing this. Can someone tell me how they implemented it, at least?
I put my CSV readers in their respective class. So
Okay.
for the student CSV reader, I put in the student file, and then for the staff, I put it in staff.
Yeah, that's definitely, yeah, that's one of our options. And we'll probably do it that way as well. So we can put our code that creates all of our students in here. What is another option?
Can you put both in person? Or
So if you think about it conceptually, the person class, does the person class have to know about students or staff?
no.
Yeah, so I don't think person would be the best candidate, because you want to try to keep the what is it called, the encapsulation. So basically keeping stuff that is related to each other within the same context. So I don't think person would be the best place to put it. What other file has information on students and staff?
The school.
What is it?
School.
Yeah, school.
Yeah. So school, here we have our staff and our students that we are going to create. So another option would be that we can create here a method that like initialize students. And then we have another one that initializes the staff. So that's an option. If we want, we can put it in here, or we can put it, like we said, in our respective classes for student and staff. Right now, I'm going to do that instead. I'm going to put it in the student and staff classes, just to show you how we can use the class method or static method that was mentioned yesterday. Okay, so let's start with staff. We're going to go to the staff folder. What's a good name for this function?
Yeah, I'm just pulling from the prompt, but all students, all staff.
All students? So typically functions,
all staff.
All staff, yeah. With functions, you want to name them something with a verb. So you don't want to name them just a name. So all students refers to like a thing. That should be a variable name. Versus if you are creating a function, you would say get all students or initialize all students or something like that. So I could say get all students like that. I could call it even initialize students from CSV. I could call it I had another name, but yeah, basically you want to name it something that is very indicative of what you are trying to do. That way, if you ever look back on it and you forgot what you were implementing, you understand what is happening here. So get all students, let's say from CSV, or you could say,
Just a heads up, you're in staff right now.
oh, thank you. Load staff. Okay, load staff from CSV. And we wanted to call this from the school here, right? So here we would want to say staff dot load. Oops. I'm going to import the staff so I can actually see the autocomplete. So from staff, import staff. And then I'm also going to need to import, what is it called? Students. Hold on one sec. Okay. So basically, staff dot load staff from CSV, and then the student is going to have a similar function that we can just write it out here if we wanted. It doesn't have to exist yet, but we have to remember to actually fill it in. So load students from CSV. Okay. Our student class does not have that yet, so we can create that as well. You see how I'm kind of jumping around. A lot of times when you're writing your code, you might be jumping around between files and like creating a little bit here and a little bit here. That is normal. It is better if you try to stick to one feature and implement that and then move on to the next. But yeah, it's your own coding style. Okay, so load staff from CSV. We need to, what are our steps here? How do I load the class? Load the information from the CSV. So I have a file, right? What do I do with the file?
To open it up, and then you do like with open and then the path to that CSV file.
Yeah. So
you can open it as CSV file or something.
As CSV file here. Okay, so a CSV file is just any regular file that has commas that are separating the values. That is all. Like CSV stands for comma separated values. I'm not sure if we went over this. But basically, even if this had if this was called staff.txt, I should be able to run this exact same operation that I'm going to do for the CSV. So the extension just kind of tells us what's in there, and it helps us with processing. But when we're actually opening the file, it's just opening it as a regular file, and it's reading one line by one line. So the thing that actually allows the file to be processed as a CSV file is what library?
The CSV library.
Yeah. So the CSV library just takes any file, doesn't matter what it is, that we put it in there, and it tries to process it as a CSV file. So if it's not in that same format, it'll give you issues, but regardless of what the file name is, it will process it as so. So we're gonna open the staff file. We have a few options. We could either do the what is it called? The absolute path, where we would have to get the path and append like the relative path and stuff like that. For right now, I know I'm around the same area, so this data folder is in the same like big directory, so I can just use a relative relative import. So where am I right now? I'm in staff, which is in classes. My data is in here. So I need to go from inside of classes out to the bigger folder. And then I want to access data, and then I want to access what's inside. So to do that, to go out of the classes folder, I'm going to do two dots and slash. Now I have access to the bigger context. I can do data, and then I can go to staff.csv. So this opens this file and names it as CSV file. And I don't recall how to use the Python CSV module, so I can look it up real quick. So CSV dict reader. This is the Python docs. I can just scroll to dict reader, which is right here. And they have an example for me. So I'm already opening the file. I don't really need the new line. Okay. So I need to create a reader, right? Based off of the CSV library. So csv.dictReader. And what does this take? It takes a file. So I'm going to send in my CSV file. And then it takes any field names that we want, but we actually don't need these. We only need to send in the file, as we see here. So here, I get it for reader in, for row. So reader becomes a bunch of, like a list of dictionaries. And for row in reader, we can then print out the row just to see what we have. And for right now, I'm not really, actually here. So this function is going to be called from school. This one has not been created yet, so I can just comment it out. So basically, when I run my runner, it'll create school. It'll go in here. It will then try to initialize the staff by calling the function that I created. So that's a way to test it. So when it calls this load staff from CSV, it'll do this and then it'll print. So I'm just going to run my runner. Actually, let me go back. I'm in the wrong directory. I'm in classes right now. So I have to go back. And now I can run runner.py. No module named staff. Where is this? It's saying it's in line 1. Import.
If you put a period in front of it, it works.
I think this, yeah, I think this is where we need the dot. Yeah, I need to read up more on why, or like what's the difference. Okay, so no module named person, the person, sorry, this one is where it's in the staff folder. Oops. Staff, so this one also needs a dot. I think if it's within the same directory, it needs a dot, but if it's in another one, you just call the name of it. Okay. I messed up something in student. I think I had started writing code and I forgot about it. So yeah, run your code often because that's the only way to find these little issues. So if you write a lot of code and then you try running it, you're gonna find all of these imports that are not working. So even here, I need to do the dot person. I run it. Okay, so now we're getting a different error every time, which is good. That means we're progressing. Now we have to go back to staff. Here it's saying that no such file or directory. I think this is because when we are running the file, it's in the runner. So we're running it in here But then when it's going into here to open the what is it called? The CSV file, it is basing this relative path off of the initial running path. So it's not running it from within here. So it doesn't know that, oh, we started in classes. So I was wrong about that. So we have to go back here. And there we go. So now it initialized a school, it loaded the staff from CSV, and this is now printing out a dictionary of all the stuff that we have. Great, okay. So per dictionary, we need to create a staff instance. Also, I forgot to add, so static method just allows it to be called from outside. It seems like you can call it from outside even if you don't add this, but I'm gonna use the class method for this one. Why should I use the class method for this one? Can anyone tell me what does the class method give me versus a static method? So both of them can be called from outside of the class based on like the class itself and not the instance. So what does class method offer me extra?
Is it the dot notation?
No, not necessarily, but good guess.
Is it it'll pass the class attributes with it, right?
Yes. So in here, it'll give us access to the class itself. So that way, when we're creating this, we can just use this class that was that was implied, and we can use it to instantiate a new staff. So instead of printing, let's say I want to create a new staff person.
Sorry, can you please repeat why we are using class method instead of static method?
Yeah, so class method, the only difference is it gives us access to the class that is where it's being called from. So if I go back to my school, I called staff dot load staff from CSV. So now because I added the class method, sorry, staff, I'm gonna move this over here. Okay, so because I use the class method, it gives me access to the class that it was called with. So staff is what is going to be sent in. So this CLS refers to this class name. That way, when we're in here, we can just use this class like so let me call this like staff class if you want. This is just for now, but you should probably call it class or CLS. So this gives us access to call, to make an instance of this basically. So if I say new staff equals, oops, staff CLS, what would I send in here? Huron? Was it you or no, it was, what is it called? Sorry, it was Isaac. I think you asked the question.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. So what do I send in here? If this gives me access to the class and I want to create an instance of it. This is going
instances of the class, like of the staff class.
Yeah, so this gives me access to the staff class because of how I called it. So I called it staff dot load staff from CSV. So when it goes into this function, load staff from CSV will have access to the class that was called from it. So this one here goes in here, basically. So when I'm in this function and I have access to this class and I want to create a new instance of the class, what do I have to send in to here?
Staff.
So what I want to send in is the information that initializes a staff member. So using this is going to be the same exact thing as using staff like this. This just gives you access to the class without having to name it. Does that make sense? So this CLS here that is offered with the class method, this is going to reference this same thing because we called it like this. So with a class method, it sends in automatically an implied variable. So this variable is going to be whatever was behind the dot. And I think someone, like whoever mentioned the answer before, you were hinting towards the right thing. Like it's something related to the dot. So basically, it's the same as when you have an instance and you're calling instance dot the method name, and then you have access to self. That self is tied to whatever was behind the dot. So in here, CLS is tied to this class name because it was behind the dot. It automatically sends it into the function and we grab it here. And this is only accessible because we use the class method.
So in line 18, if we use staff instead of CLS, it will still work the same?
It should still work the same. I just wanted to show a demonstration of when we would use this class method. Yeah, for sure. But it's going to be the same thing. So if I do this, and what do I need to send in? I need to send in all of this information. So let's just say, it's going to be really annoying so this is a dictionary, right? It's going to be very cumbersome to say row at name and then comma row at age and so on. So I'll show you how to do it in a sec, but basically if I wanted to initialize this, I would say like this person's name, and then I send in the age, I send in, oops, the role, ID, and then password. So this is just fake data. And this will create, this new staff member is going to be based off of this staff class here. So CLS will refer to the class itself. So if I print new staff.name, I run this again. Okay, so yeah, it basically created a new staff person here, and we initialized it with this information. And if I change this to staff here, because that's what the class that is being created, it also does work. So yeah, you don't technically need to use class methods, but this is one of the very few applications of it. So I wanted to show it. But yeah, you can just do this. You don't have to make it a class method. It can be a static method. Oops. Static method, and you can remove this class. This works as well. So you're able to.
Is the point of the class method in this instance just to, like, I don't know, help someone who just arrived at your code with what you're trying to do?
I think so. I think it just, I'm actually not sure. I haven't seen class methods used much, but I also haven't used Python in a strictly like class-based way in a while. So yeah, so class method or static method can do the same thing, but class will just, instead of having to put this, you can make it generic. So class method, and in here you can instantiate it using CLS. Here you can use it through.
I just had a quick clarifying question.
Yeah.
So when you instantiate all these classes or all these staff from the CSV, that's all going to get saved into school.staff, that property. Is that where it's all going?
Yeah, so right now it's not going there yet because we haven't returned anything, but it should be, yes. That's where it should go. So right now, when we're trying to initialize it, it's going to call this function and then set whatever this function returns to staff here. So in our function here, we need to create a staff list. We can call it like literally staff list. And then we want to return it at the end. And so right now it's going to return an empty list because we haven't appended anything to it.
Okay, just to add on then, if that CSV was uploaded like new information, how would that affect the program? And I guess like, would it instantiate only those new instances of whatever was appended to the CSV, or would it like I mean, I guess I'm just trying to clarify if the CSV file changes, how would it affect the staff or the school.staff information?
Yeah, so since your program isn't going to be running forever, so you changing the file, you don't have to worry about like updating and stuff like that. So basically, whenever you run your program, that is going to pull it's going to start from scratch. Basically, it's going to pull all the CSV items and make them into a list. So if the CSV changes while the program is running, if you're only calling this function when you're initializing, then nothing is going to happen. You're not going to get the new information. So you would have to have like a specific function that allows you to update from the CSV. Yeah.
Okay, that makes it clear. Thank you. I think I just misunderstood how it operates.
Yeah, no, definitely. Great question. Yeah, other questions?
Yeah, so I'm kind of confused. I was gonna say, for back to one question ago, the class method versus the static method. When would be like an instance you should probably use the static method over the class method?
The static method, you would use it if you're not instantiating class. So if you're not making instances of a class, then use just a static method. But typically, if you want to use if you want to make instances of a certain class, you should use class method.
Okay, so it kind of helps like whoever's looking at your code be directed like, oh, this is just like a method, it does this. It doesn't really create instances, but it does this other action. And then it clarifies what your code mostly does.
Yes, yeah. It also it gives you access to this, which isn't always needed, but yeah, there might be some other uses, but this is the main one.
Okay, thank
you. Someone else was going to ask a question.
Yeah, I was going to ask with the like CSV part, if you use like the word with, you don't have to close the CSV, correct?
Exactly. So here I'm using with. So whenever it's out of this indentation, when it gets to this return line, the file that is open will automatically close because it's out of this context here.
Okay, and let's say that you didn't use with, and you keep it open and you add someone to the CSV, would that like update the CSV like real time?
It'll update the CSV. It'll probably not update your dictionary or anything like your lists. But yes, if the file is open, you can use it wherever in your program. And the reason why people want you to close your files is if you try to open the file in another place, it might cause like some cross-stream things. I'm not exactly sure, but it's good practice to open and close your files when you're like close the file after you're done using them, basically.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're not creating the correct staff yet, right? We're not using the CSV data. We're using our own fake data. So yeah, like I was starting to say, when we want to create the information and we want to grab it from here, we can access every single one by this notation. But there was something else that we've used that might help us send in all the data into staff and then just have it being taken care of from there. So let's say we want these to be keyword arguments because our dictionary is, I'm going to print out the row again. Our dictionary has key values. Yeah, our dictionaries are in the key value form. So can you guys remember, I think we talked about it the first or second day of Python last week. There was something that we can use that we can send in all the information all at once, and we don't have to really worry about specifying the name of it.
So double asterisk.
Yeah. So the double asterisk, and then we can send in row. So this is similar to the spread operator in JavaScript. So it takes a dictionary and then it sends in everything as a key value pair. So what do I need to change up here then? If I'm doing this, if I'm sending in the key values, what do I need to pull from here?
You got to make it match, right? So it's like star, key, what is it? KW args or K? Something?
Yeah, keyword args. Yeah. So, keyword args. So basically we have to expect keyword arguments in that form. So this one creates them, this one pulls them. And now we can actually send them in here. So here we can access the actual keyword args using the names of them. So I know that person will take name, age, role, and password. I can just say, what was it? Keyword args. And then I use this. In VS Code, if you like double click on something and you want to add parentheses or something around it, you can do this. So this, and this I want to make like that.
Sorry, I quite don't follow like this keyword arguments. Could you please explain it one more time?
Yeah, definitely. So the keyword arguments, basically instead of specifying all the different variables that we have, we're going to say that I'm going to accept a dictionary. Basically, I'm going to accept as many keyword arguments that you'll give me, and it puts it into a dictionary form here. So this just makes it easier up here, up front, instead of us saying that I wanted row at name and row, like, so instead of specifying every single variable and accessing it from the dictionary, I can just send an entire dictionary to my initializer here. Sorry, this one. So this initializer, if we do this, it'll take a dictionary, which we then can use to initialize our information, instead of having to have that long row here and then also pulling a long row here of all the different variables that are available. This just makes it more concise and easier on this end.
Gotcha, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you did that, would you also have to update the person class?
So right now, because I didn't want to update the person class, I can just access from keyword args the rest of the information here. But eventually you'll have to access them somewhere like this. But instead of having like many variables in here, and in here, you will have them in like 2 less spots. So you don't have to put them here or here. You just have to specify them when you're doing it. So you could, if you'd like. I'm not going to, but if you wanted to do the same thing, you would update the person class and then just send in the dictionary of arguments, and then you can pull what information you need from there. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. I like totally overlooked what you were doing in the super line there. So
oh, no worries. Yeah, yeah,
all.
of course. All right.
So sorry, I just had a quick question. Why are we using like I get why we're using like double asterisk wargs, but isn't there like another one like asterisk and then args? Like what would be the difference like using between those two? Like why is it quargs instead of just args?
Oh, the one asterisk here. So the KW stands for keyword arguments. So that means that each variable, each value has a key that will define, we can like use its name. If it was just star args, that means it's going to take a list, and it's going to be a list of arguments just separated by a comma. So it's not a dictionary, it's a list of values, versus this one, you're sending in a dictionary that has the keys that you can identify it by. So if you were just pulling the args like this, you would have to access it as a list. So here, if I hover, or a tuple, but yeah, the only difference is tuples, you can't change them. So it doesn't want to allow you to change it.
So double asterisks, taking keys like name, age, role, employee ID, and password?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, versus if you're just doing the 1 star, so 2 stars allows it to be a dictionary with keywords. 1 star is just a list of values.
Follow-up question for the args thing. If you were to have a list, for instance, you could pull in those args. Sorry, if you were to have a list, tuples list, right? Mm-hmm. and then you were using args, could you do something along the lines of initializing them by index position then instead of the keywords, the name, age? Okay,
yeah, you would have to access it through index or like loop through it and find what you need to find.
Understood. Yep.
Definitely. Yeah, so it seems like we're creating the correct new staff. Let's double check. So I can print out new staff. This will probably not give me anything meaningful because I don't have the string method that represents it. So I can just print out the name to double check. And if I run, cool. So this is creating an instance of staff, and then I'm printing out the name. So that means everything's correct. So what do I have to do now? I'm sending back the staff list, but it's empty right now. What do I have to do with the staff list and the new staff?
Append or populate the list?
Yes, we have to get the staff list. And every single time we create a new instance of staff, we will just append. So since it's within the row, append new staff. And that is it. So I removed the print statement from in here. So I'm assuming that this is going to work. I'm going to go back to school. This is saving it to here. And that means if I am in my runner, I can print the school name, but I can also now print staff, which should be a list. Print school.staff. Oops. Okay. So now if I print, there we go. So I have a list of staff objects, which is exactly what I wanted. It's not pretty right now because it's just printing out like what it is. But if I wanted to, or s in school.staff, so if I loop through and I print out, oops, s.name. This should give me, there we go. It gave me all the names of the people who were imported. Awesome. Questions?
Can you please go back to Staff UI just quickly? Thank you.
Okay, I think it's time for a break.
Can I ask a question real quick about resources? So the way that it's structured right now, you're going to import CSV into Staff, but then you're also going to have to import it into Student eventually, right?
Yes, yes. So when I create,
is there a better way to not have to import the same library twice?
Oh, this?
Yeah.
You could have both functions in the same one. Oh, I can import, so I can
you import it to like school or something, or
from CSV, I can import only dictionary.
Only the reader? Oh, yeah.
And that will be less. So that will be, it won't be as bad. But yeah.
I'm just thinking like on a bigger scale, you wouldn't want to keep importing like the same library over and over. That's
yeah.
okay.
I'm not sure. We shall look more into that in depth at another time.
Can I see your school file again?
School, yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
So,
the runner, please.
The runner, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Of course.